right, everybody, you know what it is. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist News for the day. Hope all is well. I am in the midst of grading. This is finals week, so things are a bit crazy, but I got a phone call or a text, I should say, from my good brother. So I thought, you know what, I got to get this in because we have all in this space been waiting to hear this brother and hear from him. So all I'm gonna say as far as housekeeping business is concerned, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you will. And without any further ado, welcoming back to the Onyx Report with your boy, Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, is no other than the Green Gorilla himself. What's good, man?
What's cracking, man?
Man, we waiting for you, brother.
Hey, man, I'll be back like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I swear to God, man.
Oh man, you don't understand, man. I had cats damn near cussing me out, talking about where's Gigi? When you bringing him back? And I'm like, I didn't put him away. I didn't.
Hey, man, look, I know I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, so to speak, man. But I ain't went nowhere in spirit. You know what I'm saying? I just gotta, I had to get some things straight. You know what I mean? That's it.
That's right. Well, I've been doing this unofficial, series where, Tommy and Dr. Neil and, I've just been bringing brothers in and really, and all I'm doing is asking them their thoughts about this last, this most of this year, I should say, but really starting with the debate between Biden and Trump all the way up to now, and just getting brothers to, just kind of articulate themselves so people can understand and see through their lenses, your lens, what's been going on and what things you observed as we got to where we are now. So without any further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that debate when it took place, but what were your thoughts when it became more apparent to people that Biden's capacities were diminishing and we were starting to have, you started to hear rhetoric about we got to go down a different road? Where was your mindset? What were you thinking around that time?
I just thought that Biden looked like a shell of his former self. And I thought that he wasn't really actually prepared mentally, cognitively, to take on the task of furthering his pursuance of being the president of the United States. I just thought it looked terrible.
Yeah.
I thought this guy is not of a sound mind to be the quote unquote leader of the free world. He's just not, he's not able to do it anymore. And so an alternative has to be pursued.
Now most people were thinking there might be some kind of open primary and whatnot. Obviously that didn't happen. What were your thoughts when that whole period kind of jumped off right after Biden's performance?
I thought that it wasn't democratic at that point. I felt like, okay, well, we know that Biden, he doesn't have the capacity to continue on as a presidential candidate. So let's go to some sort of caucus of some kind. Let's figure out who we're going to democratically decide who's going to be the next person up to take on the task of being the leader of the Democratic Party. I thought that that's what was going to happen. I mean, as a natural result of what we saw. Mm-hmm. But that was my thinking. And I thought, people like Obama kind of was, promoting that road or that path. But we all saw what actually did happen.
Yeah. Now you had a couple things, and I'm not, going strictly chronological. I'm not, I'm not being a stickler about it, but just in a general sense, you had the assassination attempt on Trump. You know what I mean? You got the picture with his fist in the air and blood going down his face, which, for an election, that shit is gold. You know what I mean?
Oh man, when I saw it. Hey, when I saw that, I said, there's no way that this man will not be the next president of the United States.
Yeah.
Get all of the cases, all of the, political, persecution that this guy was going through, which I thought it was a bad move on the part of leftists. Oh man, like, that this man has already been the president of the United States. There's no way you're going to take on the task of trying to pull him down, with some, minuscule legal maneuvering. It's not going to work. And then all you're going to do is create a martyr of a sort, which is going to propel him further and push him further as being heroic in the eyes of some people who despise, the left and the Democratic Party in general. Yeah, I when I saw it, I was like, oh man, this is the stuff of gold.
Yeah, and then there was even a little kind of prelude to the whole DEI question, because I remember on his security team there was a very short little woman in there, and I don't think she showed up after that. I think he went at I forget the security agency in question, but he went at him, and there was a whole shakeup there that ended up taking place. So there was some early DEI stuff that jumped off then that I was like, this ain't going nowhere. This is about to be a problem. But they picked Kamala as the front runner at that point. What were your thoughts when that jumped off?
I suspected that would happen. And it's not outside of the, confines and the context of politics for the vice president to step up and then become the next front runner. But, in this case, I thought that maybe perhaps there would be, like some alternative means by which, the Democratic Party itself and the populace would pick who they decided would be the more competent front runner. Because we really haven't heard much about Kamala Harris when Biden was the president. I mean, like, what was she going around doing?
Right.
Like, what platform was she building? Was she perceived as being the next front runner? I just don't remember hearing much about her policies, her initiatives. I just kind of think she was like a dead vice president. Not being disrespectful, but I'm, by use of the word dead, but I just thought.
But I found these results on search.
Hold on, that's my artificial intelligence trying to give me some information. Shut up, stop. But anyway, yeah, I didn't perceive her as being, an energetic catalyst for, change and productivity and political energy within the context of the Democratic Party. I just thought she was a token candidate that was designed to, generate a niche population to be invigorated.
Yeah.
Within the Democratic Party.
Almost symbolic, right? Not only do I think she wasn't groomed to be president, I don't think she saw it. I don't think she thought that was going to happen. Everything looked very last minute as far as that. And, she didn't, I think she disappeared for like 40 days after the announcement where, she didn't have a website up. She didn't have none of that. But, but you say you thought that was a possibility probably before most people did. But as she began to come out and run her campaign, what were some of the things you observed? What were some of your reflections as this process began leading up to the debate with Trump? Anything come to mind about that time period for you?
Man, I mean, like her statement about chucks and pearls, and I just thought it was ridiculous. I'm like, okay, what are we going to hear that the average American is going to be enthralled by this woman potentially becoming the president of the United States? And I didn't really see anything of substance there. I mean, what I heard was, platitudes, pretty much the run-of-the-mill conversation that you typically hear from people who are in the Democratic Party. I'm thinking like, okay, well, that's not going to be enough this time. It's not going to be enough. I mean, the economy is not as great as it once was. The middle class is shrinking. You got the financialization of the economy. You got all of this crazy stuff happening in Russia. You got a lot of crazy stuff happening in the Middle East. How is she going to take on the mantle of being the free leader? I mean, the leader of the free world. And what is she going to do to invigorate the American populace to be behind her? I didn't hear anything that like would be of any, significance. I just didn't hear that, man.
Did you? Now, if we had you at that time, really the last 6 months or so, if we'd have still had Green Gorilla on the air, what would you have told Black men to do in the midst of that? I mean, I'm talking before anybody won the election. You know what I mean? Kamala's just starting to get on her feet in terms of her campaign. Trump is still going strong in terms of his. What would have been your advice at that time for brothers?
Well, okay, let me just say this. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different than what you've probably heard before. But I would say, look, politics in and of itself is not just electoral politics. That's the small one-shot iteration of what politics is all about. So I look at politics almost as if it's like a football team. Okay, you can draft a player. Okay, that's what electing a politician is, right? You need to select the right player, but that's only the beginning. So you can draft the most talented individual, but if they're not integrated into a system that supports them, their performance is going to fall short. And yeah, in politics, voting for a candidate is important, but it's not enough. Without consistent effort, you got to organize, you have to hold officials accountable, you have to support policies that builds the team strategy. You got to do all of that. And if you don't do it, the candidate will struggle to succeed. But, I mean, we didn't draft Kamala Harris as Black men. We already know what the Democratic Party has been about for a long period of time, okay? The Democratic Party has been about symbolism, like you mentioned earlier. It's been about tokenism, in my viewpoint, which is we're going to take a population and demonstrate how progressive we are by the tokenism that we engage in by allowing that segment of the population to be represented into what we're doing. Not that they have any substantive impact over the trajectory of our political strategy, but they're there and they represent, progressivism in terms of sex or gender or whatever the case may be. And so this signals to everyone that, we're moving forward. I would tell Black men that's not moving forward. Okay. What actually is moving forward is doing the work that happens in between the gaps. So going back to the football analogy, it's not what happens when the player is drafted. It's about what happens after the player is drafted, how they fit into the system. What is the system? How are you working to help develop the system? Every team has a playbook that's designed to maximize that team's strength and exploit the opponent's weaknesses. So we're a community. We need a political strategy to achieve our goals. So we got to have clear priorities. What are they? Economic empowerment for Black men in general, right? Dealing with the criminal justice system, access to health care, and working to systematically implement these goals. What are we doing in between the gaps? Because it's not just about election day, it's about what we want. And that's why, like, your political platform, like your pointed.
Oh, the 18-point Black male political agenda.
Yeah, man, you got to hold. So I'll use the 5 P's instead of the 6 P's today. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. I would say the other word that comes before poor, but I ain't gonna say it on your show. But athletes train their bodies and minds to handle the pressure of game day.
Right.
You have to be working to perform on game day. Yeah, electoral politics is game day in a sense, but what are you doing to win the game?
Mm.
You have to educate yourself on the issues. You have to learn how the policies are going to affect you, and you have to build the skills to advocate effectively for what you want. So you got to learn how local and state governments work. You have to understand how you can begin to influence policymakers, whether it's through petitions, lobbying, whether it's protesting. You got to find some way, right?
But let me ask you this. So what do you say to brothers who are, who are grappling with just apathy? You know what I mean? Like, because, and I ask this question a lot, how many brothers can tell the difference on the ground between a Republican and a Democratic Party, in terms of the presidency? What do you say to those brothers who, vote third party, refuse to vote as a form of protest, to not seeing their needs addressed? I mean, what do you say to those brothers that are just like, man, I'm not feeling none of this?
Yeah, well, you need to start feeling it because, if you're not playing at all, others are playing for you.
Mm.
So, I mean, would you rather be so apathetic, the extent to which you let others govern in your stead? Or would you stand up and say, okay, well, look, I understand that electoral politics is a spectacle. Everybody gets to watch it. We get to see who the public decides is going to be in these positions. But the people in these positions are impacted and affected by what people are doing in terms of organizing. Now, I'll be the first to admit, it's a David and Goliath battle when you're dealing with
I don't know, but I found these results on search.
Google, stop, man. I'm about to turn this thing off, man. Hold on. But anyway, all I'm trying to articulate is this. It's very difficult to deal with American politics because American politics is primarily based upon corporatism. Okay. And both the Republicans and Democrats are impacted and affected by corporatism. Okay. And what I mean by that is corporations or private institutions that pretty much direct the decision-making processes that these people who are elected by the public, what they're engaged in, what they do in terms of lawmaking and policy initiatives.
Right.
But there are ways to disrupt this process. And we have to find those ways. It's been done before in our history. It can be done again. So let's think about ways to organize ourselves and to let people know what we think and to engage in the democratic process outside of the context of electoral politics. Because I would assert electoral politics is important, but it's only important insofar as you're able to impact and hold the people you elect accountable. But you can't hold them accountable if you don't coerce them and make them accountable, right? And so apathy won't get that. So that's my viewpoint on it.
One of the things that I saw brothers, raise an eyebrow about when Kamala's campaign started going, one of the earliest things you saw was, of course, the sororities that began to back her. I believe she's AKA, right?
Yes.
Out of Howard. So you started to see that kind of black those kind of pockets of black women who were really pushing for her to be in the presidential role, in the executive office to the highest degree. And in many ways, the accusations that black men were going to tank her campaign, they began the week she was announced as the primary point person coming for out of the Democratic Party to run against Trump. Those accusations toward black men started early, and on major platforms, not just on X or what I mean, or anything like or Instagram. They started very early on. What were your thoughts about this kind of treatment of black men this early in her campaign?
I thought about BGS. I thought about Dusty dancing. I thought about it's all who is it, Jerome fault or Tyrone fault, whatever, you know, the little
always Jermaine's fault.
Jermaine's fault, man. I was like, damn, here we go again. Can't win for losing, can't lose for winning. I mean, like, what is it, bro? Like, I mean, ultimately, I knew that we would be the scapegoat, right? Because there's been this like theme, this narrative that black men are kind of defecting from the Democratic Party, right? And that they're voting against their interests by doing so. And they're doing it because they want to obstruct this progressive and this politically potent black woman from governing, because, you know, that's all we've ever done. I mean, you know, going back to the civil rights movement, we wanted black women to, you know, be secretaries and make us coffee. We didn't want to see them as vital and integral organizers within the context of that movement. All we want to do is, you know, imitate white men and have them, you know, kind of like perform, you know, like supportive roles instead of being out in the front at all.
So black patriarchy at its best.
Yeah, man, it was the black patriarchy narrative. Okay, Negroes, black men don't want to see black women get ahead. Okay, and I don't think, like, in my viewpoint, I want to see a woman like Fannie Lou Hamer get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a black woman like Ida B. Wells get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have a problem with a woman who's black like Ella Baker getting ahead.
Mm-hmm.
If what she's doing is fighting for the progress of the entirety of the black population.
Mm-hmm.
When you start talking about black girl magic
mm-hmm.
and being representative of that kind of tact and that take on politics, well, then I say, well, I already know where this is heading. All you're really actually doing is pushing the same narrative which has been pushed the last 60 years, which kind of shows how troglodytish, how backwards, how regressive we are in terms of our politics, right? And what we think the role of black women should be versus the role of where they say they should be. And look, I don't have a problem with black women getting to the money, getting to the power, getting to the prestige. But while you're doing it, you don't have to knock me.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? You don't have to degrade me and talk about how I'm trying to obstruct you in your pursuit of what you consider to be excellence. Don't do that, man. But as it stood, though, for the empirical record, what, 84% of black people voted for the Democratic candidate. I think like only 16% of black men voted for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In terms of what I mean, there's been an increase in black men, you know, supporting Donald Trump. And it kind of went up from what it was when he was first elected.
There was even an increase in black women that voted for Trump.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
But we already know the overwhelming majority of white women voted for Trump.
Both times.
So you go figure. Your ace boom coons in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that took you away from being in harmony and preserving the contract that Dr. Ronald Neal talked about 4 years ago, right? Where he ripped the paper on the screen. They broke the contract. And you broke the contract in favor of what? And for what reason? But I mean, ultimately, black men still didn't break the contract overwhelmingly. Now,
right.
did they?
Right.
They still voted for the Democratic Party. But my problem with black men doing that is that they have no agenda. But my problem with the black populace in general is that we perceive electoral politics as the summum bonum of what political activity entails. And you're just not going to gain any headway thinking that way and being engaged in politics that way. Politics is more deep than just going to a ballot box and casting your vote every 4 years, every 2 years, every year in your local municipality. It requires you actually to get your hands dirty and to twist the arms of these politicians who, if you support them and you get them in the office, well, okay, well, send it for me. Which is what like a brother like Ice Cube was talking about when he got summarily dismissed. And hold on, son. Let me turn this thing off. I apologize for that. This thing. Google Big Brother is watching. Sorry about that. So anyway, man, I don't know if you were even able to hear it, but
yeah, we can hear it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, ultimately, my thoughts were that you have to do more. You got to be more engaged, and it's in between the gaps that you have to be engaged, not just on an election day. But I also thought this though. I thought that there's been a lot of talk among Black men, especially in the Black manosphere and online, about how to obstruct, what's going on with the Democratic Party in general, and the trajectory it's taken. And it's been about, identity politics and, the promotion of and the representation of groups that, according to the Academy, have been historically unrepresented and so on and so forth. I'm like, look, that's just not going to do it, man. The average American worker, the average American citizen is worried about their bank account,
right?
Retirement, their pensions, their access to health care, their ability to pay their rent. Can they buy milk? Can they afford the price of gas? How are they dealing with inflation? How are they dealing with the financialization of the economy? Man, the average American individual is not worried about identity politics. They're worried about money politics.
I think she was riding this wave that not only identity politics, but the feminist rhetoric would bring out this overwhelming number of women that were going to landslide this election, right? A tidal wave of women, because she ran on, identity politics and abortion, right? You know what I mean? And those were the things that I think she thought were going to trigger this landslide. But some of the things you're pointing out is exactly what not only men, but even women were concerned about, I would say. But how do you think her campaign, could miss that glaring thing? And one of the things that's come out since, and this is something Van Jones recently acknowledged, he actually said Trump is smarter than him and the left. He said because Trump tapped into social media, he tapped into male spaces on social media, while the Democrats were still kind of using not only the traditional lines of media communication, but they were tapping into celebrity worship. But Trump went down the social media line and stepped into a presidency with Congress in tow and the Supreme Court in tow, all of which for the most part standing on the right. So what are your thoughts about how the campaigns were run and how they understood what the populace was most concerned about?
Hey, bro, nobody cares about Megan Thee Stallion, man. When it comes to politics, bro, I'm just keeping it 100. Like, I'm a 53-year-old man. I love hip hop, always been a part of that, culture. But, bro, don't bring Megan Thee Stallion to me, man, to try to get me to vote for you, man. Don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't try to get me to take my booty to the poll or none of that, man. Don't come on, man. Talk to me about substantive issues and talk to me and speak to me as an adult that's not going to be impacted or affected by spectacle. Engage me with the substantiveness of the issues and tell me like what my future is going to look like in this country in the next 10 to 15 years. And if it looks dismal related to what the Republicans are offering, how are you going to make it different in terms of what the Democratic Party is offering? I didn't hear that. I mean, I heard some of it, I guess, but you know, my whole problem with the Democratic Party in general is that it's moved away from what the left is all about, the bread and butter of leftist politics in general, which is about distributive justice. I heard very little about that. And because I've heard little about it, I don't think the left is the left anymore. And I also think, though, that, you know, the left has been kind of caught into a, what do they call those bubbles? Echo chambers.
Oh, okay. I know. Yeah.
They're called the echo chambers, like where they begin to believe their own rhetoric, the extent to which they can't even like uptake any other perspectives.
Right.
And, that's to their own detriment. You have to be aware of what people are actually thinking, and you can't just get that from the academy. Okay. And what's popular, what's in vogue within that kind of context, which of course the academy is a bourgeois white institution, pretty much governed and regulated by white women. Okay. But bourgeois white women, not working class white women.
Right.
And so if your marker, if your guidepost is what's coming out of the academy and what you consider to be progressive in that domain, you're not going to get it. And I think that, that's the problem with the Democratic left at this moment. They're not dealing with the traditional base of what the Democratic Party has been about for the past, what it once was. Okay. I can't speak to what it is now other than to say that it's a travesty. Like most Americans don't care about, and I don't want to, sound like I'm punching or attacking these people, but nobody cares about like what's happening with trans women. We just don't. I mean, like how many members of the Democratic Party are even trans persons?
Yeah.
I would argue that like it has to be somewhat reflective of the average amount of them in the population, which can't be many. Well, 5. I'm being generous. 5%.
It's interesting you bring that up. If I can play you a very short clip, this is not dealing with trans in society in general. I think in this clip, they're actually talking about the NCAA, but I think there's something to this that I would like to get your about, because I think it goes directly to what you're talking about. Let me go ahead and pull it up on screen real quick. And I hope you can hear it. Okay. So let me go ahead and play a little bit of this. Let me know if you can hear him.
How many
Were you able to hear that, Eddie?
Loud and clear.
Okay, cool. So check this out. This is almost 3 minutes. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but definitely the early part, you'll get why I'm playing it. So it's dealing with the question of trans athletes and NCAA.
How many athletes are there in the United States in NCAA schools?
510,000.
How many transgender athletes are you aware of?
Less than 10.
Less than 10
Yep.
out of 510,000?
Yep.
Are you governed when it comes to policy of the NCAA by state law?
Of course.
So if 25 of the 50 states currently say that transgender children can play in sports according to their gender identity, you're bound by that standard?
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on this subject?
I think part of our challenge is dealing with a very murky set of court decisions and at the state and federal level around this issue, which creates a certain lack of clarity around our policy, because our policy ultimately needs to comply with federal policy. Which is why guidance either on the regulatory side or on the statutory side would be very helpful.
510,000 athletes, 10 transgender athletes nationwide.
Or less.
I assume the NCAA is also concerned with.
Okay, now I'll stop it there. Now, again, the reason I'm playing this, or I played it, was because it spoke to what you were talking about. You have a party, which in some respects, one could argue has been hijacked by, intersectional feminism, extreme radical liberalism, LGBT rhetoric to the extreme, much the same way when we saw the Tea Party kind of hijack the Republican Party. If you're not on the right, you may not have seen that difference, but Republicans were quite pissed in many instances when the Tea Party kind of began to hijack what they considered what the Republican Party should have been, especially if you were, like a Reagan Republican. This was a huge transition. But on the left, we've seen it happen with intersectional feminism. We've seen it happen with this kind of, radical liberalism and this LGBT rhetoric and culture of pronouns and so on and so forth. And so we're seeing it here. And the NCAA instance, I know that's a clip that's specific to the NCAA and what they're grappling with, but I play it because I think there's a similar mirroring of things happening in the larger society where there's so much emphasis placed on this culture on the left in regard to LGBT, but the numbers are radically low. Radically low. I mean, I remember writing a paper on this years ago where the percentages of LGBT in society, there's a reason they even had to lump those categories together because the numbers are so low. And the majority of those who are claiming to be queer at this point are often women who are kind of jumping on board, but it's questionable how many of them are actually queer versus, what they're kind of using to kind of bolster those numbers. But anyway, that when you get to the raw numbers, they're extremely low. And they, I think in many ways mirror what we just saw in the NCAA. Going back to, the campaign, Kamala's campaign, this push for this radical leftist culture. Do you think that is that they kind of dropped the ball missing that, or do you think they kind of overestimated how much of America was going to keep going along with that? What are your thoughts about that whole notion?
Man, they have been given indication after indication that this is not what the average American citizen is worried about. Mm-hmm. So, we already know what woke politics is. Okay. Symbolic, you can call it that. I mean, it's focused on representation, cultural recognition, identity-driven issues. Now, okay, I'll say this as a philosopher, okay? Justice can't be reduced to economics. But good God, when you begin to focus primarily on representational issues or identity-driven issues without taking stock of economic issues that are important to or relevant to average persons, then you're in a bubble. You're in an echo chamber. And I think that this is because most of the people who become prominent members of the Democratic Party have been enculturated within that echo chamber, which they come from these liberal academic institutions. And to them, this is what is needed for us to, move forward, to be progressive, and so on and so forth. But look, you have to begin to address structural inequalities. Okay, you can make gestures towards cultural symbolism, chucks and pearls, and so on and so forth. You can promote celebrity endorsements, but you have to at some point begin to engage and advance robust economic policy. And the Democratic Party didn't do that. They haven't been doing that for I don't know how long. And my guess is that they're not doing this because the Democratic Party operates within the same corporate power structure as the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. So addressing systemic economic issues like wealth inequality, tax evasion by corporations, labor exploitation. See, that's going to require you confronting capital, okay, which holds the power to retaliate through disinvestment, relocation, layoffs. So, I mean, and what I'm trying to articulate, I know this is pretty heady and, pretty cerebral, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is that capital strike is something that the Democratic Party is afraid of, just as is the Republican Party is afraid of, okay? Because in this country, we place too much power in the private sector. Okay, we've done little next to nothing to confront the financialization of the economy. Okay, and the left, in my viewpoint, they've taken the easy route. Woke politics is a safe alternative to doing the real robust work that it takes, right? That it takes to confront real and true power. At one point, the Democratic Party, even the Republican Party, was willing to confront capital power or corporate power, but nobody wants to do it at this moment. So what's the easy way out? Talk about being progressive in terms of sexuality, gender, and create a bunch of tokens and so on and so forth. But that doesn't really move the needle, man. The average American citizen doesn't care about tokens or anomalies. They care about what the cost of milk is, what the price of gas is.
Employment,
Women are worried about this stuff just as much as men are worried about this stuff. And apparently white women are also worried about it. Like, I don't care. Like, this is the thing that really, I ain't gonna say it intrigues me, because it's not like I think about this all the time, but I do think about it from time to time. And my view is that post-structuralism has pretty much taken over the political mindset of the Democratic Party. And what I mean by that is that they don't think that anything is objective. Everything is just a matter of culture. Everything is just a matter of education and indoctrination. There's nothing that pushes back against any of this. So all you got to do is browbeat people with the idea that we can change men into women or women into men fluidly. Or that, we could change the innate impulses of men or women in relation to how they perceive family life and, the roles of gender in general. But what we found is that this is just not the case. This is why you will find women who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars who are looking for a man who they can rely on financially, even though they are making more money than the man that they say they want to depend on. And this is why, like, a person like Kevin Samuel teases out these contradictions, or the Black manosphere in general teases out these contradictions. How is it that you want a man to be all of these things, these providers, these protectors, but you're all up in the mix, making money, demanding that you have access to positions, but you can't find a suitable man because you still have instinctively, or maybe perhaps, I don't know if that's the right word, but you've been indoctrinated in a certain sense, in a schizophrenic way. On the one hand, you've been taught that you need to progress and that, like, sexual roles are unjust, but you're demanding a man who fits a certain traditional gender role. I just don't see how it's going to work and how it can lead to coherence in the long term for this culture and this society. I just don't see how it's going to work.
Well, I do need to add this because you're bringing up gems, and I think it also speaks to, because as you kind of alluded to, women being indoctrinated in a very particular way to develop a specific outlook, not only about themselves as black girl magic and whatnot, but as black men being lesser than. Shout out to Medium Man. Um, he put this out the other day on his community tab, and I thought this was interesting, and it speaks a little bit to what we're talking about. So he says, ladies, do you understand now? Right. And so the clip he's showing says, what women read is that we earn more than men. Right. And so the article clip says young women are out earning young men in several US cities. Right. And then the second clip he shows, several US cities, actually refers to 22 out of 250 US metropolitan areas for women under 30. Right. And he says, you see how the wording tricks women into believing that they're earning more than men. Now, I'm going to read the clip because I have radio listeners that listen to the show. So I just want to be clear why I'm reading it. But it says the gender wage gap is narrower among younger workers nationally, and the gap varies across geographical areas. In fact, in 22 out of 250 U.S. metropolitan areas, women under the age of 30 earn the same amount as or more than their male counterparts, according to the new Pew Research Center analysis of Census Bureau data. So the argument that you hear more and more women coming to the table with about how much they're making more, and you can even see a certain entitlement coming out of this. And of course, this plays into Kamala's posture for her campaign in terms of relying on this upwardly mobile elite group of women that she actually kind of frames with this Megan Thee Stallion-esque, Beyonce-esque, kind of vibe. A lot of it is built on denying the actual empirical reality that underlies it, right? So it kind of speaks to what you're referring to. I agree with you, there are women that actually are making more, while at the same time, looking for someone making more than them to take care of them. I've actually seen it. I've experienced that. But you also have this side of it where this rhetoric has taken on its own momentum, and you got, people who are invested in this idea that men are no longer necessary in many respects. Any thoughts about that, especially as it related to how Kamala, kind of relied on that demographic to bolster her numbers?
Yeah, that demographic, man, I think is they don't know what the hell they want, man. I think there was a study that came out that said more and more women are unhappy. They're unhappy for what reason? They're unhappy because they can't find a suitable man. Mm-hmm. But damn it, I mean, you're that bad bitch. I'm sorry to use that word, but I mean,
that's what they use. Oh yeah.
But you got to be that nigga now. I mean, if you that bad bitch, you got to also be that nigga. You fought for this. This is what you desired. You desired to be the head of the household. So now take on the responsibilities associated with that role. Mm-hmm. I don't see the problem with it. My thing is, you can't have all of the benefits of being a woman, but have all of the benefits of being a man, but accepting none of the responsibilities fully associated with either role. You can't do it. It's It's incoherent, it's schizophrenic, it's contradictory. It can't happen. And most women, they want a powerful man. They want a self-sufficient man. They want a confident man. They want I won't use the alpha term, but I mean, if I were to use it, it wouldn't be out of wouldn't be out of line in this instance.
Right.
In this, this context. You can't have it both ways. Either you're gonna step up and say, okay, I'm going to do away with all traditional gender roles, but you can't do it. They don't want to do it. They can't do it. It makes them severely unhappy to do it. So what is it that you really want? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what they want. I'm not even trying to figure out what they want, man. I'm trying to live my life, live my best life. And if I can't find somebody who wants to live my best life, I'm like, passport,
Yeah.
you know, alternative populations.
I think it really what their press is about power, of course. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I do think that there was a kind of culmination of sorts. I think, especially since the late 60s, the feminist idea has been able to create this system of values. And then, you know, if you can actually get into the highest levels of government, implement them systemically across the board. And I think that was what a lot of the emotional energy behind Kamala was about. We're finally going to get into a position to implement, you know, this agenda across the board. And you know, I think that's what the push has been about. And I don't have a problem with, you know, women in leadership. I mean, in the Black community, there are very few of us that haven't been socialized, you know, with women leaders. So this idea that Black men, you know, are you know, inherently hostile to female leadership, it denies reality, because most of us have been, I mean, for the most part in America in particular, from the single mother at home to the predominantly females teaching in school, you've been under female leadership until you reach adulthood at least and graduate high school. If you go to graduate school, you've been under female leadership much longer than that. You know what I mean? So it for the most part, that's not the concern. But when you do take into account this type of, you know, agenda, what Dr. Neal calls the mommy state, you got to deal with the reality of, you know, the political push underneath it to try and get this to happen. Now, I want to take you back to Kamala and Trump in terms of moving up this election. So there's a period where both parties spoke to the National Association of Black Journalists. Trump actually spoke first. Kamala he said she was supposed to be there, but she didn't show up. So he came in person and met with them. And this is on YouTube as well, right? He had a panel of people he was talking to in an all Black audience, and he walked in the door knowing that this was not going to be well received. I don't think I've seen, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think I've seen Kamala do that, where she walked into a room of conservatives and knew it was going to be an uphill battle the whole time. But Trump did it. He went in, showed up, answered questions. He checked a few people on the panel when they got out of line, but they had a back and forth, you know, so on and so forth. Kamala comes later and speaks with the same group, National Association of Black Journalists, and they basically give her, you know, a softball pitch, and it still didn't go well. And she even kind of, you know, walked out in a huff, despite that, you know, they really didn't even grill her to any extent. But these were the kinds of interviews people were complaining about at a certain stage of the campaign process. Did you have any thoughts about, you know, the kind of places they chose to go, the kind of places they avoided, the kinds of, and, you know, of course, and I'm leading up to their first debate, or their debate, I should say. But did you have any thoughts about, you know, how they ran their campaigns in terms of who they chose to speak to, what platforms they chose to go on? Because we know Trump went to Joe Rogan at a certain point, and I think Kamala went to Club Shay Shay. But just any thoughts on who they chose to entertain?
Yeah, you know, my whole viewpoint on politics is that you should be speaking to people who you disagree with, and to let them understand where you're coming from, and hopefully to, you know, assuage their doubts through you know, your conversation, and to let them know that, like, I'm not as bad as you think I am. I'm not as, you know, vitriolic and evil as I'm perceived to be by the people in your echo chamber. You have to extend beyond your comfort zone. And I will say this, people perceive Trump as a person who doesn't give a F.
Right.
He will talk to you and let you know what he thinks and give you his honest opinion, whether it's perceived as regressive or not. It's the honesty. And whether he's honest or not, at least he appears to be honest. Okay. But, you know, my viewpoint on it is you can't play it safe, man. You have to take risks. And I think that Donald Trump is a person who's willing to take risks. Whereas people in the left traditionally, I mean, within the last 30 years or so, they haven't been willing to take risks. they're caught in that bubble.
Mm.
When you start to talk to people and, converse and to argue and to engage in dialogue with people who only share your opinion about what progressivism is or what it entails, then you lose your ability to be persuasive with people who might not, agree with everything you so-called quote unquote stand for.
Right.
And I think that's just it's a hallmark of the kind of echo chambers that are being proliferated across American society at the current moment, man. There are no places in, like you saw in the past, where people who disagree profoundly with each other come together and just engage in discourse and rhetoric and argumentation. You don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
I saw it all the time. Just looking at the old videos, I show them all the time where you got people like the feminist movement, what's the future of it? Or I posted these videos on my YouTube channel. And these are people who went to school with each other, who've been knowing each other since they were adolescents.
Right.
And who engaged in debate with each other, even though they had differing viewpoints. You don't see that anymore. You see intolerance. You see almost like a kind of blind adherence to ideology and to I call it pre-commitment thinking, politically and philosophically. It's like, okay, well, is there anything for you to learn by your engagement with others? Is there any way for you to maybe perhaps adapt your viewpoints based on what others are saying and what they're feeling and what they're thinking?
Right.
And that's the hallmark of what a genuine political mastermind will do. I'm just sorry, but the left is so far away from being pragmatic in terms of what's politically useful, expedient, and persuasive. They have no idea at this moment. And they better reshape and rebrand. If they don't reshape and rebrand, man, they're done. Because nobody cares anymore about these issues that they're talking about, man. Nobody cares anymore. I care about money, man. I care about resources. I care about retirement. I care about whether or not I'm gonna have health care. I care about the legacy I'm gonna be able to leave for my children. All this other stuff, it's important to a certain extent, but you can't get by just focusing on those issues alone anymore. And abortion, come on, man. No sensible person in the 21st century is worried about that anymore, man. Anybody can go anywhere and get one of them things now. They got Plan B pills and all this stuff, man.
Yeah, Trump, well, not even about Trump, right? The abortion issue has been kicked back to the states, but on the left, it's talked about as if this is 1953, and women are going to hair salons or getting the coat hangers again. This is the kind of rhetoric that you're almost kind of hearing about abortions, but abortions are not illegal. Go ahead.
Plan B.
Yeah.
Stops all that. I was talking to a young cat the other day, man, which, it was pretty tasteless conversation. However, he did have an important point. And his point was, we don't have to go to Planned Parenthood anymore. If I did the dastardly deed and disseminated my seed, all I have to do is get a Plan B. Done deal. Over with. Now, anybody who needs to have an abortion in the 21st century clearly is not taking responsibility for their reproductive desires or their health. You don't have to worry about going to actually, I don't even want to be graphic about it. So, but you get the point. You don't have to go there anymore. There are other ways to obstruct you're becoming pregnant. So what are we even talking about anymore? Why is this even a hotbed issue? Women have control over their reproductive health by leaps and bounds of what they had from the 60s, man. So why is that even an issue right now? It's not really a deep-seated issue. But I'll say this, you know, the average American man wants to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
They want to build a legacy. And whether you like it or not, I personally, you know, my religious and theological beliefs kind of oscillate. But I mean, you know, America is still like a traditionally Christian country, man.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. And so, you know, most people want to have families and they want to reproduce and they want to leave a legacy for the people, the children that they reproduce. This is, and one could argue this is natural. Some people even call it like a natural or biological imperative. But all of this is being perceived by, you know, some members of the left as being something that's deeply oppressive. Like having kids and reproducing is something that like the evil nature, diabolical demon, like created these conditions. Like, are you crazy, man? It's a blessing to be able to have a child and to see your own DNA projected forward into the future, man. That's what, and if it doesn't happen, then what happens to the human species? It ceases to exist. But let me stop getting into that, because that, you know, I don't want to taint your show with like these crazy opinions, man.
Oh, come on, man. Now you know the Green Gorilla has been welcome on the Onyx Report from the first day he stepped foot in these streets, man. So this is home, brother. You speak how you need to.
But you brought me here, Doc. You the one to talk. You brought me to YouTube.
Hey, man. Hey, all I know is that we needed that voice, and we still do. We still do. We know you got to do things. You got to do what you got to do. But you know, especially this sector of YouTube, and I think I can safely speak for quite a few brothers, man. We love the Green Gorilla, man, and we always gonna want to hear him. We know he got business to handle, but we can't wait, you know, for you to come back. But let's get to it. So the election jumps off early November, right? You know, it's going down, and we see that Trump has been elected president. What were your thoughts about what you were hearing and seeing people do in response to that election?
Man, I just thought it was like, you know, I thought it was a crash out, like, you know, like a kid having a temper tantrum or something, you know, like, bruh, you lost. Get over it. Keep it pushing. I remember when Trump was first elected, I mean, for his first term, okay? And, you know, me thinking, like, to a certain extent, what does this represent? Does it represent like a movement backwards in terms of racial policy and, you know, or like we returning to a time in which there's going to be something akin to segregation, which, I mean, one could argue, I mean, like the life prospects of the average Black person is the same if there's a donkey or an elephant in office. And I didn't see any, to be perfectly honest, I didn't see any appreciable difference in my quality of life from when Trump was elected the first time. So, like, I mean, maybe if what you're focused on is symbolism and representation and tokenism, maybe that would kind of hurt your ego a little bit. But to me, I'm like, well, it doesn't hurt me at all as a Black man. Now, we already know, bro. I've talked about this ad nauseum. The civil rights movement was hijacked by white women. And what should have went to Black men, or even Black people in general, because I think both Black men and Black women have always had, you know, a burden of working, primarily for the advantage of white folks. That's what we've been doing since the inception of this country, whether it was through slavery, sharecropping, menial labor, doing Jim Crow, whatever the case may be, we always were working. Men and women together, working to sustain households and to make it happen. And it just so happened that, you know, white women were able to interject themselves into the justice debate about what was forward thinking. And they just basically they stole the show. They stole the show. And so here we are now seeing a group of people who've become enamored by the idea that this is what progress actually is and what it entails. I will admit though, Trump, he came out hard. I forgot what I called it, the Malleus Maleficarum, the witch's hammer. Came out with the race and sex stereotyping act, which was basically like, look, you're going to stop beating up on white dudes. You're going to stop with all this badgering and all of this guilting that you're doing in the university system and the corporations. Just recall Black Lives Matter, right? And how they changed their statement about who we are and what our values are. Like, it changed in weeks after he passed that act. They removed all of that literature from their website.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about.
Do you recall it?
I remember. I also remember when they, groups like BLM were taking over freeways and protesting, and Trump started talking about when he gets into office, folks are gonna start going to jail for that. And as soon as he stepped into office, all of that shit stopped.
But there are a group of people who know that they can benefit from these kind of policies, but only a certain segment of these so-called demographics are able to take advantage of those. And primarily it's people who are highly educated and who live, in coastal cities, who are able to take advantage of these policies. Like the average Black woman, what does she stand to gain from like Kamala Harris being the president of the United States? Any more than like what any Black man standed to gain from Obama being the president of the United States. Because the last time I checked, Black men were getting killed on the streets when Barack Obama was the president. Yeah. Didn't Mike Brown get killed, and didn't Black Lives Matter start when Obama was the president?
Yeah.
So, like, the structural inequities of this country don't change because you got a person who's supposed to be representative is in a political office. It don't happen like that. And this is why I harken back to what I said earlier. This is not just a draft day. Like electoral politics, it's a draft day. But it's not just that if you're being politically intelligent. Politics is ongoing. It's something that happens all day, every day. But if you're not engaged in it, the real work of politics happens behind the scenes. Doesn't happen once a year, doesn't happen twice a year, doesn't happen every 4 years. But, for us, everything is based on emotion and feeling, and symbolism, and all of this. That's just not, it's not cutting it, man.
Yeah.
But crashing out, like going insane and being in your emotions and your feelings, if anything, if that's what you're really about, then you should be plotting on how you can get back the next time. But you can't get back the next time if you're in your feelings. You got to plot, plan, strategize.
Do you think that leading up to the election and even the flip outs that occurred after, do you think that had any impact on how Black men and women, engage each other, perceive each other? Because you notice you didn't see any brothers flipping out like that. You didn't see brothers flip out like that when Biden was elected. You didn't see brothers flip out when Trump was elected either time. You don't see these crash outs on media and social media and whatnot. Do you think, tell us what your thoughts are as far as after the election, how Black men and women may have perceived each other based on, these kind of electoral investments, because there seemed to be a difference in how, in what we were looking for, what we invest in, and to what extent. Any thoughts about that?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I just have to admit it. Like, there's a real threat to the material advantages that Black women have been able to gain from, the kind of social policies that have been enacted by the left.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fact. I mean, they've been advanced. I mean, women in general have been advanced due to sex being included in the Civil Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, life for us has been the same. We've been left out of it. Just imagine, like, okay, you go to the party, it's a pizza party, and when you get there, it's like a couple of pieces of sausage and pepperoni left in the box. Like, that's what you get, but everybody else gets a slice of the pie.
Mm.
We already know we gonna get the crumbs, leftovers. So what are we crying about? There's nothing for us to cry about. We know what we're gonna get. Now, you, on the other hand, if you've been given policy initiatives and you've been given access to positions, whether it be governmental positions, whether it be, educational positions or admissions into professional programs or whatever.
Access to grants, even welfare. But go ahead, yeah.
That's a real threat to them, but it ain't no threat to us.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of brothers are like, okay, let's level the playing field then. So you've been given a leg up because we kind of been left out of these policies. They haven't been targeted towards us and improving and progressing our livelihoods. Now, and the funny thing about it is white women is coming after y'all asses. How you like that? How you ace? You need to crash out on them. Didn't Joy Reid or one of them ladies who was, talking about Black men, then they recant and say, well, I gotta start to I gotta apologize. It wasn't Black men who did it.
Yeah, she did. And the illest part to that is if you go back, because this data is publicly available. If you go back at least, 6 years, go back to 2016, the election. Black men have been voting pretty consistently, across the board. Now, like you said, there's been a growing number of Black men voting on the right, but the majority of Black male voters tend to vote left, and they tend to vote extremely progressive. And as I pointed out in a previous show, they voted for women to the highest degrees. So when Black men started to get picked out as the impromptu cause of Kamala's failure, the week she was picked as the front runner for the Democrats, it made no sense on a demographic level because Black men have been consistently progressive left voters, right? So it was really an attack. And like you said, people like Joy Reid were responsible for that attack because it was unwarranted. We all know it's white women's votes that have not only changed the game for whoever's in office, whoever gets picked, it's white women's votes that usually determine that. But for Black men to be picked out and targeted in that way, especially by prominently visible Black women, it makes no sense. It really, just pissed a lot of people off. And then, of course, and I need to ask you about this, Obama steps up at a particular point in time. This is just before the election, a few weeks prior, I believe. And he starts talking about how he's hearing that Black men have such a problem with women in leadership that they're not backing Kamala to a great enough degree, even though politically, after the election and years prior, Black men are out of all the male demographics in question, Black men are the most progressive group of men.
Yes,
and
sir.
It's still, and here's the thing, it still doesn't matter. We still get shit on whether we are or we aren't. And I'm not sure if that's going to spawn, future generations withdrawing from that, because we don't get credit when we do it. We don't get credit when we don't. It's just a constant attack across the board. But did you have a chance to see Obama make those kind of statements? Did you have any thoughts about that when he did?
Yeah, he said something about your sister, your auntie, your mama, and look, Obama, man, come on, bro. Like, at the end of the day, I love my mama, I love my sister, I love my daughters, and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. But damn, they gotta love me too. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just gonna say, okay, well, whatever. I'm not gonna just fall on the sword for everything you want and advance everything you desire. If this ain't mutual, if it's not reciprocitous, I don't give a damn what you want. Sorry. Don't tell me I have to. Like, it can't be blackness. Oh, flat blackness? Ain't that a term you coined? So when it comes to blackness, I gotta be on board with what women want. But when it comes to what men want, everything is regressive. I take umbrage with that. I have an issue with that. It's got to be a give and a take. It's got to be some balance. If you want to be, black nationalistic Umar Johnson type, shit, there's got to be some ma'at in that. If it ain't no ma'at in that, well, then I ain't down with that.
Well, as you pointed out, even though we've seen these kind of treatment, this kind of treatment of black women, this access that they've been able to have that black men haven't. And one could argue that a lot of this came about with the Faustian bargain they struck, particularly with white women, right? As you pointed out earlier with the civil rights movement, there was a bargain struck. And I believe black women looked at it like they could get further with white women than they could with black men themselves. They kind of kept one foot in the camp so they could talk about black community issues at a certain point. But at the end of the day, when feminism granted them opportunities to advance, especially at the expense of men, they had no problem taking it, right? And we've seen this with all kinds of social programs and so on and so forth. But here's my question. We're at a point, especially after this, I think Trump's election is really kind of symbolic on this front. All of those attempts to advance without black men have failed. They failed. They don't, and then on top of that, over a year ago, we started to see conservative white men taking these women to court, like the Fearless Fund, these kind of things, and they started shutting down these special programs, special grants, special resources designated just for black women. Conservatives started to shut that down before Trump was elected. So now we're at a point where I think we're seeing the ultimate failure of this, advanced black women at the expense of black men kind of approach to politics. Do you think that this is repairable as far as the black community is concerned, based on what you were saying a moment ago about how black women were able to enjoy these benefits and they knew their men weren't, and they didn't give a fuck? You know damn well if black men started to get resources and we didn't extend that to black women, there would have been hell to pay. We saw it happen with My Brother's Keeper.
Oh, sure did.
It didn't even get implemented. Well, it did get implemented, but it wasn't federally funded the way a lot of people thought it would be. It was just, but it's nowhere near what we had hoped it would be. And at the very thought of it, black women lost their minds and opened up a national petition to include black women and girls, even though they already had a White House Council for Women and Girls. They could have made that national petition just to add a component for black women to that. But instead, they chose to attack My Brother's Keeper program, and we saw it. It still exists, but it's a shell of itself, or at least it's a shell of what we thought it should be. And I put that at the feet of black women themselves, not wanting for the very idea of black males to advance. But when it came to them being able to access resources, especially since the pandemic, they had no problem doing so. But now I think we've seen a profound failure of those politics. And I think Trump represents that red wave that's going to push back on all of those kinds of quote unquote advancements that women have been able to have access to that black men haven't. Do you see this as repairable as far as the black community is concerned, when black men look at this and realize, y'all traded us in, and you got what's that fairy tale? You got a bag of beans for it. And now we've been seeing, after the crash out of the election of Trump, we've been seeing a profound number of apology videos on social media. Black men, we need you. We need to be a community. Now, black men have been talking about community for decades. I ain't seen that really change, but I just want to know, dude, does the Green Gorilla think this is repairable as far as the black community is concerned, based on what we've seen since the late 60s? Really, we can go back to the 50s if you want to talk about welfare, and you've done shows on this. I'm not telling you nothing you don't know, but
yeah, man,
it's repairable after decades of seeing this kind of split approach to politics, where black women have been willing to throw us under the bus for their own advancement. And when all of those politics collapse in the face of Trump's election, when everything culminates into Kamala being promoted to president and it fails, and the policies are being rolled back, what do black men do, in your assessment, as these women start apologizing and acting like they had never gone anywhere?
Approach it with fear and trepidation. Hey, man, y'all drank the Kool-Aid. We ain't drank the Kool-Aid. You got to show some sincere contrition. Like men to be back on the program of like reversing, like the putting the contract back together. It's going to take a lot of contrition, a lot of deep-seated conversations. And I'm not just talking about conversations on the social media level. I'm talking about you got to contend with people like Curry and yourself and Neil. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to have to talk to these brothers politically at the higher echelons and have real conversations again. And sincere conversations that might have the capacity to offend and to create, emotional, uproars. And unless y'all willing to do that, man, it's a no-go. I personally, a lot of harm has been created. And in order for it to repair, I can't prognosticate. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I know a lot of black men are going to be like, hey, I ain't going to believe it till I see it.
I've been approached by a number of black nationalist brothers who have said to me, well, we just need to, we need to reform the community. We need to, just get it moving now. Now they can see that, that strategy is, with white society isn't going to work. Basically, it's this idea that black men just need to swallow it and just, repair the community and really act like nothing happened. And I'm just, my response to them, because I guess they look at me and say, well, you have a platform, so you should be pushing this. And my thing is, I don't think you understand. I believe brothers have already decided. And this is not something that I'm telling them to do, or brothers online or even I think brothers have decided. And when you see, as I've said, and as you said a little while ago, as far as passports are concerned, you got brothers that have already made decisions based on really black women's behavior, right? They've already made decisions. Now, as far as marriage goes, I mean, I think every group predominantly marries itself. So that I don't think those numbers are going to go away. I think that's going to be a constant. But I think the percentage of black men who have decided to socialize and develop their family networks in other contexts, whether they be African, Caribbean, South American, Asian, I think those numbers are going to continue to grow, especially as some of these young cats get older. When I look at my son's generation, that kind of racial loyalty that, Gen X kind of grew up with after the Black Power era of the early 70s, I think that's gone, bro. I think there's some radical shifts that a lot of people are not willing to accept about the future of the black community. What are your thoughts?
Hey, man, don't tell Minister Farrakhan.
Oh, man.
White girls, man. Hey, look, this is what I'm saying. At this point, man, we live in a diverse world and we live in a world where there are things happening to where men have, of all races, they have options.
Yeah.
Right? And so those options are not going to go away.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, I love my mother, you know what I'm saying? I love my sisters. I love my daughters, you know what I'm saying? But like, look, we're going to do what's best for us, man. We're going to do it. There are options for us now. They're just options for us now. And so, like, if you want to harken back to a time of nationalistic Black solidarity, I wished it was the case, but I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. And I'm not saying this because it's something I don't want to see. I'm saying it because in a practical world where Black men have the opportunity to do what they want and to not feel guilty or obstructed by the ethics of coercion, I would call it, for fidelity to, a group of people who are not showing fidelity in return, man. Why? I don't see it. I just don't see it, man.
No, I was just gonna say real quickly, you hit on something. I'm not, my response to this, contrary to what I've heard people say, my response is I'm neither excited about or depressed by it. I'm not angry and upset, and I'm not sad, weeping, walking through the halls of my house. I am. This is it is what it is. That's how I look at it. When I look at where Black men are going, I understand why. I get it, and I understand what is still happening in the community to alienate Black men from wanting to kind of, because look, man, I'm still teaching, so I still get young brothers, and the first thing they talk to me about at 17 in their freshman year of college is how badly they want families. They want to be husbands. They want to be fathers. But we live in a reality where marriage and family is not it's not a norm anymore to an extent. It's in many ways a pit to fall into where you're going to find yourself in perpetual debt as far as men are concerned. So when we talk about, the upcoming shift in the Black community, we talk about disinvestment, or even amongst nationalists where they reinvent the idea of Blackness by, finding Black folk from all over the world, even though we know that they're going to do so to avoid being with Black women from America. See, that's the piece they like to miss out when they talk about nationalism and Blackness across the world. Yeah, it's true, it's happening, but you're not being honest about why you dating that woman from Nairobi. You dating her because you don't want to have nothing to do with the women you grow up with. So you understand as much as anybody in these red pill streets why you're doing what you're doing, but you're not being honest about it. But that aside, I'm saying my view on it is, regardless of whether you're getting with African women or you going across the world and passport level or whatever, I'm not passionate about it one way or the other, because I understand this is where we are, and I understand how we got here. That's why I wrote my last book. I get why we got here, and I understand where we are, and I understand what it would take to change. And I don't think Black women in particular are willing to do what you just described they would need to even start the repairs. So at this point, I look at brothers doing whatever they have to do, and I just say, look, wherever you find your peace, live it. Live it.
Black men have been finding their peace, man, from Harry Belafonte to James Earl Jones.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? It is what it is, and I ain't mad at him.
Nope.
Dr. Umar, man, eat your heart out.
And I'm waiting to hear Green Gorilla call me from a beach with his feet kicked up. That's what I'm talking about.
Hey, man, it ain't too far away from the future. And look, support the Green Gorilla, man.
Let's get him to the beach, y'all. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, look, support the Green Gorilla. You know how to do so if you've been following the Black manosphere for the last 4 or 5 years. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, at the end of the day, all I can say is, man, you can't be beholden to an ideal that nobody else is beholden to.
Mm.
You cannot.
Mm.
That's stupidity to me. If you're beholden to the ideal, then maybe perhaps I'll be beholden to the ideal. But if you can't find it within your own heart, the inner recesses of your own mind to see that this is something that you should get with and honor and respect, then why should I honor and respect you?
Mm.
If all you're going to do is dismiss and be derogatory and spiteful, how can we build with that? I don't see how we can. Now, I can't like generalize and say all this or that, all Black women think this way, because like, let me be frank. Because of popular culture, this kind of mindset has been instilled within a wide variety of Black folks. But I will say this, the only hope will come from working class Black folk who really haven't been exposed, because like the average Black person really hasn't been exposed to this shit. Okay, I'm talking about like blue collar, regular, everyday Black folk. Like they don't know shit about the Black manosphere. They don't know shit about intersectionalism. They just living their lives, man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hope for Black love. But even within the context of that, though, these young brothers, man, they are like, fuck it. Like, this young little white chick is all on me, and she thick. Let me try exotic. Let me try it out. Well, why not? Because if it's the case that Black women are able to explore their options and to find what they perceive to be suitable for their, upgrading in life by going outside of the context of thinking about Black men, well, why the hell should Black men be like, oh, well, I gotta be dedicated to this Black woman or else I'm suffering from some sort of self-hatred? Why? I just don't understand it. I don't get it. So this just harkens back to me, like going back, rewinding the conversation. If you want a Black man to be everything to you, your provider, your protector, your confidant, your soulmate, whatever the case may be, but at the same time, you're arguing that you got to be a queen, you got to be a bad bitch, you got to be a boss bitch, so on and so forth. And you got to be attitudinal, cantankerous, overall disagreeable, overall unapproachable, recalcitrant. Who wants to deal with that, man? No man should. No, this transcends gender, though, in my viewpoint. Who wants to deal with that?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to deal with that. I don't. I know you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I know most of the men in the Black manosphere have decided a long time ago to hell with that. Why should we, for the sake of so-called saving the Black community, destroy ourselves? I don't see the reason why that's I don't see how that's workable or feasible. I just don't.
I have, and I want to respect your time. I have two more questions. One, I think we all expect a rollback of DEI across the board, and it's already happening, and Trump hasn't stepped into office yet, so it's already going down. Companies are stepping back from it, universities even. What impact do you think that will have, if any, on Black men directly?
It'll have some impact, but not too much. I mean, we already at the bottom of the barrel. If it's the case that we're already getting shot and killed, or being denied access to what the left is offering, what's going to dramatically change in our ability to progress and matriculate to success within this system? I just don't see it. And the funny thing is, I actually thought to myself, and I said this earlier to you again, what was the difference in my life when Trump was the president the first time as opposed to what it is or might be now? I don't see a big difference. Maybe perhaps it'll humble those who gain access to opportunities that we've been denied. I don't know. I just don't see what the big difference is going to be in terms of what this guy was doing in office the first time as to what he's doing now. Now, do I think, like as a political philosopher, I think that it's a shame that affirmative action cannot be justified in any sense by the white populace, knowing the history of America. But, you know, like, why would I expect for a group of people who denied our humanity from the beginning, the inception, for their own profit? Why would I expect for them to think and behave any differently as they did back then? Now, I mean, you know, now they're claiming, okay, well, this is reverse discrimination. This is, discrimination against white men and white people and so on and so forth. I just think that, you know, the ostentatiousness, the incalcitrance, the refusal to engage with people who you disagree with, I think that this has led to this impasse. And they painted themselves into a corner. And it's been to the detriment of everyone. Most ostensibly us, because now we can't even make the moral argument anymore that we need to preserve these kind of policies and that they're actually working to improve our communities. It's been a tragedy, man. We went so far in the wrong direction. I don't even know if we can even pull it back where it needs to be. So do I think, like, I can go over many ways of justifying policies that should ensure that, like, people like us should have access to resources when we've been denied them. Like, for example, white people say, well, you know, the government giving like set-asides to black people is discrimination. But damn, like, you know, the Homestead Act, it existed for how long? The GI Bill, which was systematically denied to black folks, how long did that last? Like FHA loans, how long did that last?
Right.
So, like, I mean, you know, the economic floor of America, the expansion of the middle class was predicated upon the Federal Housing Authority giving loans to, you know, working class white folks. I think that, you know, a case could be made that, like, damn, well, you know, we were systematically denied these opportunities that everybody else in this country was given who had a white skin. Like, well, why can't we be the beneficiaries of government policy? I just don't see, I don't see how this amounts to I'm discriminating against you. But see, this is what happens when, and it, let me put a cap on this, right? To me, what Trump represents for white people is a departure from a politics of guilt. However, what it doesn't do is it doesn't, for white people in general, for working class white people, it doesn't empower them in the ways that they think it does. Okay, so the financialization of the economy is not going to stop with Trump. The corporatocracy, the oligarchy that exists within American culture is not going to stop on the account of Trump becoming the president. Now, it might be a departure from the excesses of the Democratic Party, but I don't think that it's going to actually achieve what white people think it will. Okay. Working class white people think it will. And the extent to which they think it does or will, they think it will, I think they're foolish. Because, look, who is Trump, man? He's a white dude who comes from a wealthy white family. You think he's going to make policy that benefits like working class white folks? Now, he might talk a good game. Well, I'm going to bring back manufacturing. I'm going to stop immigration. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And that's my pushback against Trump. He's a faux populist politician. Think he's going to work to the advancement of, a group of financial elites. But I also think that Democrats have been doing the same shit. And that's why at least I can appreciate his honesty. Like when he was debating with Hillary Clinton, he was like, shit, yeah, I took advantage of the tax laws. You wrote them. You wrote them. But I say all this to say, I think that, and again, let me try to put a cap on this. The Democratic Party, despite its messaging on being inclusive and equity, has been hesitant to do what it's supposed to really actually do, which is to democratize power. And the reason I say this is because I recently saw a video by the philosopher Orami, right? And he's like,
okay.
And, I agree with him. It's like, okay, you have to actually dismantle the entrenched hierarchies in this country, which really actually are corporate power. And you have to decentralize political control. You have to do that. So what does it mean? It means expanding working people's rights. Maybe perhaps through unionization, workplace democracy, I don't know, but increasing citizens' participation in governance, meaning that like you and I can actually have a say in the trajectory in which the country is going to go in terms of its financial policies. Participatory budgeting, local decision-making, right? Breaking down barriers to political and economic power. We need to, the wealth concentration in this country right now is ridiculous. Okay? And I don't think the Republican Party, I don't think Trump is going to offer any headway in that domain. I don't see it. Okay? We need expansion of every citizen in America to healthcare. But I will say this, and this is also echoing something that Orami said. It's very difficult for Black people to make the case that they should be included when they fucking refuse to work. You got to work, man. You got to show people that you're willing to work and to participate, even though it's very difficult, though, sometimes for us to see why we should participate because of the injustices that have existed for so long. Okay? So, but damn, it's gonna be a hard sell for a group of people who are being like resistant and recalcitrant and like, kind of like vitriolic. Why should I fuck with y'all?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, look, like I was telling you, man, I work with a bunch of blue collar people at the current moment, man. And on many levels, I'm directing their activity. But the funniest shit happened, man, the other day. I swear to God, I want you to think about this, man. I know it's fucked up for me to even talk about it, but it's a reality, right? So this Black girl fell out in the lobby of this institution where I work.
Okay.
And the first person to try to resuscitate and to, kind of comfort and to bring this person back to consciousness was a white woman who was a Trump supporter.
Ah, damn.
All the Negroes standing around looking, what the hell happened to her? And it's the white woman wiping her brow off. Now, I'm not saying that white people are naturally more sympathetic, which is ridiculous because we know the history of what goes on in this country, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But damn, man, it's just a testament to how far it's going on. And man, we don't even really respect each other. We don't care for each other's well-being. We've alienated ourselves from each other. It's just the reality of what it is, or maybe it's the conditions, like Curry talks about the objective conditions of our existence, to where we kind of like exhibit these pathologies. I don't know what it is, and I can't say because I'm not the sole person who comes up with ideas and thoughts about like where we are and why we are where we are. But damn, man. We can't be these crabs in a bucket, man. We should not be, but we definitely can be, but we should not be.
Yeah.
I understand why it's easy for a white person to take the stance that they do politically. But I would urge them to understand that even though this person presents themselves as a populist, they don't give a fuck about your economic well-being into futurity. I don't think that this, not to say that Trump, because I think that, I don't think that Trump is really a Republican deep down, though. I don't.
Well, there were some years where I heard plenty of Republicans making that statement. So
I think he's an opportunist. I think he is I ain't gonna say he's a narcissist. I think he's smart. I think he's an opportunist. I'll leave it at that. I think he's an opportunist, and we'll see where it goes. But you know what the Republicans have been about for the longest period of time in terms of, their general disposition related to race and economics. But shit, bro, if I just saw the man do some things I never thought I would see him do. I'm talking about Trump, right? Like he dedicated or allocated like a permanent funding to HBCUs.
mm-hmm.
I never thought I would see that.
Right.
I never thought I would see him give pardons even though I don't probably agree with the pardons he gave, like he gave Kodak Black, this Floridian rapper, a pardon. He gave Lil Wayne a pardon.
Mm.
I thought I would never see that. So yeah, am I critical of Trump and some of the shit he does? A lot of what he does. Do I think he's really actually a part of the capitalist established corporatocracy? Yeah. Do I think that like America in general, though, even the Democrats are part of that process and part of that establishment? Yes. But I think if the Democratic Party really wants to be progressive, they got to really actually deal with economic issues and stop trying to fucking, they have to depart from this path, and they're going to be forced to do so now, which I think is great. I think it's a great time to be alive and be a black man.
Well, I know for me, going back to this whole question of, how black men experience either parties, recently, since the election, I should say, I've heard attorney Antonio Moore make some statements about that. One of the things he has a tendency to do is when he talks about black folk who vote for Trump, he ridicules black men who have done so. Even when pointing out that the numbers of black women have increased, but he still ridicules black men. And two things he said, I think, were important. He said he was talking about some of the policy changes on child support when you vote in a right wing, presidential candidate versus a left wing, and how that adversely impacts poor Black folk. He talked about the privatization of the post office and how that's going to end up costing Black jobs. I hear that. But at the same time, we also talking about a left that instituted the 1994 crime bill. So you can't take one party and pedestalize it and then punish people that decide to look at other alternatives. And I'm not saying this as a Republican. I'm an independent. I vote third party. I've been doing so for almost a quarter of a century. But I don't believe in ridiculing Black men's political choices just because you don't like it. I actually look at trying to understand why Black men are doing what they do, and I believe I do, because as far as what we get from the left, they've articulated much of that for Black women, and Black men have not really been talked about until we saw Kamala put forth a lightweight agenda just before the vote went through, and none of that had anything to do with anything Black men asked for. It just was a list of policies that the Republicans are doing. I mean, the Democrats are already doing. She did the same thing that Stacey Abrams did in Georgia a while back. So all that to say, I think the apprehension by growing numbers of Black folk at politics, as they have been with the Democrats, I think it's warranted. I think the Democrats, as you said, need to rebrand, and I think Black folk are well within their rights to request that they do, to demand that they do, if they want our votes. And I think we need to have that posture with any party. But that said, my last question to you is, based on everything we've seen, based on where we are at this moment, what do you suggest that Black men do moving forward, based on what you see on the horizon, what you're experiencing, and who you're talking to? What do you think Black men need to stay aware of? What do we need to focus on? What would you prescribe to Black men at this juncture?
I'm gonna go ahead and give you I'm gonna give you the props, man. They need to focus on that Black political 18-point agenda, man. Focus on what they want to see brought into reality politically and socially, and work towards making it come to be. If that's what they want, make it come to be, make it come to pass. But you don't make it come to pass by, voting. You make it come to be by actually, engaging in the political process day by day. You got to work towards what you want to become a reality. So it's like Ice Cube. Like, what's our political agenda? What is it? And to work towards making it come to pass, and to be a potent, way that we, work towards seeing what we want to come to pass in this world, in this society. That's what we need to be focusing on. What do we think? What do we want? And how do we strategize to get it? And to not let anybody guilt us into thinking otherwise.
Right.
And don't get lured into identity politics, whether the identity politics be of a nationalistic sort, as promoted by somebody like, say, for example, Umar or Roland Martin or anybody. Okay, or Boyce. What do you want, and how can you make it come to be? How can you bring it to fruition? And we live in a so-called, quote unquote, democracy, but it's only as democratic as we force it to be. And just kind of going back to what you said earlier, look, there are some intersections, which I know is a dirty word, but there are some things that overlap between us and the right. The idea of promoting families, and even though one can argue, like, okay, well, white folks advocate for being punitive related to child support and so on and so forth. I know I've been a part of an organization called the Father Support Center for a while, and these people are doing like great work in trying to bring Black men into contact with their children and providing resources
Okay.
for them to be able to do so. And it's primarily being egged on by the right, not the left. Because of course, as you know, given the BLM statement, we don't need father. All we need is like an extended community of birthing folk to make it happen.
Right.
Okay, there are some. Go look at that, and I'm glad BGS recently showed that Brenda Werner video that I posted a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are some intersections between us and the right.
Yeah.
What are they, and how can we leverage them in order to get them to move or arc in the direction that'll be beneficial to us, if that's what we're doing. But we should use every opportunity available to us to push our agenda, whether it be the right or the left.
So you're saying we really need to have a political maturity about how we navigate this space, whether it's the right or the left. We have to establish relationships with whomever is in a position to meet our needs in exchange for our support.
And
I mean, go ahead.
And there you have it. You go.
I mean, that just seems like the stage we're in. There needs to be a political maturation about how we look at this. Because even when I was a kid, a lot of what, when I asked my family and my advisors about politics, it was a very kind of Manichaean, light, dark, white, black, right, wrong kind of approach. The Democrats were what we needed to do. The Republicans were monsters, and it was, and I was like, okay. But then I hit 94, like I said, with the crime bill, and it was like, well, okay, we're still reeling from that in many respects. So, that in and of itself kind of upended that. And like you said, when Trump started, letting certain brothers out of jail, when he started dealing with HBCUs differently, it was just kind of like, and those are just a couple of examples, but it really just kind of points to, we got to mature the way we talk about and approach politics. We have to. It needs to grow. And I think that's what Black men have been pushing for by withdrawing their support from the left, even brothers that are abstaining from political participation. That may not be something we all agree with, but I understand why it's happening. And I think Black men's willingness to explore other options has been dismissed as political laziness or ignorance, when I think in many respects, it's a product of political maturation. But that's just me. So
I think so too. Don't be blinded by ideology or toe any particular political party line. Think about, first of all, you gotta figure out what you want, and then try to find a way to implement what you want, what you desire out of this world, this country, whatever the case may be. You have to find a way to make what you desire become part of the establishment. I mean, everybody that succeeds does this. Okay, right. Here's my argument about what I think is just. I debate it. I converse with other people, whether they agree with me or disagree with me. We try to find a way to demonstrate that, like, what we're saying is part of what justice requires.
Right.
And let the chips fall where they may, but don't be silent. Don't be so apathetic to the point where what you know is right, you don't even fight for.
Right.
That's just my view on it. I don't think, especially like in a space like this, the Black men are like, okay, well, we have no thoughts, no desires related to anything political. I think that's just the exact opposite of what's taking place in a space like this. We have a lot of ideas about what's fair, what's just, what's right, and what is wrong.
Right.
So keep speaking and keep changing the political landscape, because we have done so and we'll continue to do so, because I don't see this stopping.
Yep. I agree. I do agree. And I want to thank you, brother, because I know, we talked before the show, and I know how busy you've been, and I really appreciate the time coming forward, because I know you probably got to get on the grind as soon as we get off here. But I really appreciate it, brother, because I don't think you realize how much respect and love these brothers have, myself included, for you and your work and your voice. So thank you for coming through, man, and dropping a word, blessing us with that. We appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, my pleasure, bro.
Yeah, man. We're gonna need you. We're gonna need to see you come back as soon as you're able.
Bro, trust me. I'm trying to get this. Well, actually, I'm not trying to. I'm about to get this computer, because I done bought a whole bunch of cameras and shit, because I'm going to start showing my face or whatever the case may be. But the whole point is, the computer I have is not quite powerful enough for me to do what it is I want to do. And, you know, when I do it, I like to do it big. So, so it is what it is. So it's going to take a second, not long, because I think I'll be up and running at least by the end of, I know for the end of January, I'll be up and running.
This is the thing. There's no way a mind like yours should be hampered by, just needing a computer. Support the G with the PhD, which you can do at Cash App. It's on the screen. Support the brother. Let's get him back on YouTube. Let's get his voice back out there, because we've been waiting to hear it. And I don't know if you realize how many brothers who write me privately or in my comments, or even the comments of live videos, are like, "Where is Gigi? When are you going to interview him? When are you going to talk to him?" So the brothers have been asking. We're waiting, and I'm challenging the brothers out there to support the Green Gorilla. $ G with the PhD, and let's bring the brother back the way he should be. You know what I'm saying? So again, thank you for coming through, brother. It's much appreciated. And I didn't even realize how much I needed to hear that voice. So I'm happy myself.
Man, I'm happy to converse with you, man, and to talk about these issues, man. Like I say, man, I don't have all the answers. I'm just one person, man. I think I built up a rapport in this space. I'm not perfect, as nobody is, but I needed some time though to just live a normal life for a minute, man, and not be ensnared by everything that goes on within the context of social media. But I'm ready to, I always was ready to come back, you know what I'm saying? But I want to come back with a bang. And so I think, the best thing for me is to kind of get, situated in my environment, and to, because I moved from Texas, I came back to St. Louis, and it's just a different environment totally. And so I had to take time to acclimate to where I'm at now, and to deal with some of the situations I had to deal with, and to get reintegrated with my family. You know what I'm saying? It's just to get back to the real world, so to speak, and then become tethered into, the real world. But I'm ready to get back into this, because I got a lot to share on a whole host of issues. I swear to God.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it, good brother. All right, man. So that was him, the Green Gorilla, back in the space. We're gonna look forward to it, but in the meantime, make sure you support him. I'm gonna take you down and close us out, good brother. All right.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, man, we always gotta appreciate when the Green Gorilla comes through. So I'm just happy he allowed me to ask him a few questions, and could share with us what his thoughts have been. But y'all support, like, share, subscribe, join, donate. Make sure you continue to help Black media, Black male media at that, continue to grow, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get these kinds of conversations on too many other platforms. It is what it is. You got to support the ones that generate the kind of analysis you're interested in. And if you don't support it and it goes away, it is what it is. You had a chance to support it, but you weren't. So make sure you do, so we can continue to develop this. All right. So that being said, I will holler at y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not
criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.